Born to Be podcast, where we believe you were created on purpose and for a purpose. Each week, we deliver inspiration and interviews with today's top thought leaders who are living out their unique calling every single day. Are you ready to discover your true identity and become who you were born to be? The future is yet to be created. And now, here's your host, Darren Earlywine.
All right, Sage. I want to start in the beginning, and I know for you, I didn't know this until doing some research this week, that you are an Army kid, right?
So we refer to ourselves as Army brats.
Army brats.
Military brats in general. I don't know where that term came from, but yes, I'm an Army brat and proud of it. And, you know, if you want, I can go through the list of places I've lived. And it's the reason why when people say, where are you from, I really don't have a good answer.
Yeah. Because it's been all over the world, right?
Yeah. Born in Panama, but was only there for less than a year. Canal Zone, Panama. And then, to the United States, and then several states, and then 2 other countries, and then back to the States, and then the TV world, and that in this career field. I guess my upbringing kind of prepared me for it because, you have to live quite the nomadic lifestyle in TV, at least the way it kind of traditionally has been done, where you kind of start small and hopefully climb. So I've been moving my whole life.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel like that is? I mean, like you just said, it shapes being able to embrace the nomadic culture of TV life. But how did that shape your kind of, I guess, as a kid, your worldview of the world in general, or culture, or even yourself in that perspective?
Oh, gosh, there's so many benefits to that kind of upbringing, and then there's a lot of layers to it too, and I think primarily good ones. But it's kind of cliche now for people to say that they don't see color when it comes to race and all that. Well, I literally did not, because it was such an open, accepting culture where people like me, who I'm biracial. My mother is white, half Irish, half Italian. My father is African American. And in the military, there's so many couples like my parents, and so there's so many biracial, interracial kids. And just the most accepting culture, I think, anywhere. One that no one really talks about, though, which is fascinating to me. No one really talks about. People have their own preconceived notions about the military, but to me, the greatest benefit, especially growing up in it, is just that everyone is accepted. There's no racial issues or undertones, at least not as the dependent. That's what they call us kids, and the spouses are the dependents. And it was just the most beautiful, accepting culture. It didn't really matter. And the first time I ever really experienced any kind of racism or anything kind of ugly and uncomfortable was when we actually moved to Indiana and did not live on the military post. My dad was stationed at Fort Benjamin Harrison. We moved there for the second time in 1989. Right before going into my senior year of high school. And so I just was so sheltered. So maybe that's the best way to put it. As worldly as I was for living in Panama and Greece and Belgium and Colorado and New York and California and Indiana and all those places before I even graduated high school, I was worldly. Like my Girl Scout troop, they would go to Paris for the day. Or my 3rd grade field trip when I lived in Greece was to go to the Acropolis. Like, those were my experiences.
Wow.
And so worldly, my kids here in Connecticut, their big field trip is the Bronx Zoo, and that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. More commonly, when they were in elementary school, they'd go to the trash museum, literally the trash and recycling museum here in Bristol, Connecticut. I was going to see the Eiffel Tower. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is lame. So I mean it when I say worldly compared to on the other side of it, you're almost sheltered because people are so wonderful and accepting.
Yeah.
In the real world, outside of the military confines, where there's so much support for each other, there isn't this support in the civilian world we found. And so, but I didn't realize that till I was going into my senior year of high school. So that's one part of it, of how that upbringing helped me and influenced me, was just to be so open and accepting of everybody. And it was just this kind of pretty beautiful world, I thought. And in other ways, just having the courage to walk into a room not knowing anybody. Like if you wanted to make friends in elementary school or junior high or high school, you couldn't be shy, and I actually was painfully shy for
Really?
years and years. Yeah, to the point where my parents were like concerned. Maybe we should take her to go see doctors because she's so shy.
Oh my
That was
gosh.
me. Yeah, I know. They watch me on TV every day. They're like, "What the heck?
Yeah.
Who is this person?
What happened?
What happened to our sweet, quiet daughter?" And so, but even though maybe I didn't show it, it was definitely influencing me every single day of my life and especially when we had to move to different countries where our neighbors and the kids next door were on one side they were Norwegian, the other side they were French, across the street they were Turkish. I mean, like it was truly this amazing world just in our little neighborhood. So,
Yeah.
you have to learn to be tough. You have to learn to stand up tall and walk into a room or a classroom or any situation, believing in yourself as when no one else knows you. And I had no idea how much that would help me in this career.
Absolutely, Sage. Well, one thing we talk about in our online course, Spiritual DNA, is that so much of who God's created you to be is placed in you from birth. Like it's in you, and it's a process of just growing into that. And so, one of the things we always talk about as we interview folks is where some of those childhood seeds of vision and of passion. And I'm guessing as you look back, as you're in those environments, as you're meeting different people, as you're intrigued by the world, where do you, as you look back, how early can you start to see maybe some of the seeds of a curiosity or desire to move towards journalism or broadcasting or sports in general? I mean, kind of where did those seeds start for you?
Well, I announced to my parents and my brothers in 1984 during the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
We had just moved to Colorado Springs from Belgium. And so coming back stateside for the first time since 1978. So I'd been overseas for 6 years and watching the Olympics. And I was always into sports because my dad was a great athlete in high school, but certainly in college. And it's something I'm pretty proud of. Maybe I can drop that in there later. But
yeah.
And two brothers, younger brothers, like sports was always just such a huge part. My mom was a good athlete. That our weekends revolved around sports and then watching sports. And in Europe, there was only one English-speaking TV station. So on the weekends, the only thing that we could understand was on whatever network that was. It was the Armed Forces Network, AFN, for all you military people out there who probably some hoorahs out there because a lot of us Army brats grew up on AFN, Armed Forces Network. But all that was on weekends was sports. During the weekdays, I remember there were soap operas. I remember General Hospital and Ryan's Hope. My mother used to watch them when she was off of work. And then on the weekends, it was the Dallas Cowboys and the Washington Redskins and the Lakers and the Celtics and just sports. So I didn't have a choice because it was always on.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I was a decent athlete. I was a runner, track and field. And then I started in riding horses when we lived in Belgium, the equestrian show jumping, et cetera, which I still do a little bit. And now one of my daughters does it and it's pretty competitive. But like that was my life with sports. And so I knew, however, at a young age, I wouldn't probably be able to make a career out of that. And back then there were no, professional leagues for women in anything.
Sure.
So I thought the second best thing would be to talk about it. I wanted to remain close to sports. And when I remember we were moving into the house in Colorado Springs, the moving trucks had just pulled up. And we had like this one tiny little 12-inch TV, the kind that you had to get up and actually turn the knob to change the channel.
Oh, yeah.
And rabbit ears in the back. And you just pray that the signal doesn't go out, at the wrong time.
Yes.
And I remember watching, Mary Lou Retton and Carl Lewis and Edwin Moses and all these amazing athletes and being so in awe of them. Yes, because of their athletic ability, but more importantly, because of their mental toughness. Mm. And I thought, I know how I feel when I'm on the starting line of the 800-meter run as, a sixth grader. And I want to vomit. And I feel so nervous. How on God's green earth do these people get to the starting line of the 100-meter dash or right before Mary Lou Retton's vault, in front of the eyes of the entire world? How do they keep themselves composed, knowing that their entire lives they've worked for this one moment?
Yeah.
That is going to be over in 10 seconds. how do they do that? And I was so in awe of them that I wanted to know more about them. So that's when I decided that I wanted to be a sportscaster. And it was funny because there were no female sportscasters on local levels that I knew of at the time, certainly not in Colorado. And nationally, I think Gail Sarins had maybe done her first NFL game, and she only did a couple of them. She was the first woman to ever do that. Robin Roberts was not on a national level yet. And so I don't know why I thought that I could.
Well, see, I'd love to dig.
But there was no one else that looked like me. There were no women. But and then I was this crazy shy kid. So where did that come from? And that was fascinating. That's why I'm looking back and I still process it. Like where did that come from? And that's why I know that all those lessons from moving and all that, they were having an effect. I just didn't know it yet.
Well, I love that, Sage. And one thing I'd love to dig into, when we say it, it's funny how often this topic comes up in our podcast, is this idea of a deficit of imagination. And either if you have a deficit of imagination, you get stuck in a place where it's not that you wouldn't take a risk or go after something, but you can't imagine it. But then there's other folks that seem to have, I don't know that it's limitless, but they don't have a deficit of it. They're able to begin to imagine beyond what they have experienced, what they can see. And that's what you did. I mean, not only as far as a woman, but a biracial woman in that sports world, like you were imagining the future that was yet to be created. And so, I mean, can you go back? Is there a moment where you thought that could be possible, or was it, you know what, that this should be possible? Like, where did that start to grow?
I when I realized it, at that moment at age 11, it was just this light bulb in my head, and I'm like, I want to do that. I want to be around it. And again, it was interesting that I already knew at a young age that I wasn't going to be great athletically, even enough to play any sports in college. And I think that was probably a lack of confidence in many ways, a fear of failure, because I know that's probably another story for another day, but I just, some kids, it's obvious, okay, LeBron James kids, right? Like, wow, he's got some hops. He's going to be able to play. He can shoot, whatever. He's got pretty good genes.
I just saw Bronny. LeBron was in town here this past weekend, and the gym he was at was like 5 minutes from my house, and they tweeted out that LeBron was there. So I took two of my sons over, and we sat there and watched Bronny play, and I thought to myself, the pressure that kid has to be under, that he knows that, like, everyone is sitting here going, like, are you going to be the next LeBron James? But anyway.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I really can't imagine, which is another reason why you look at, okay, do you really want to name your kid Junior? Like there's a lot that comes with this stuff. And his kids, although he seems to be a pretty good hands-on dad, then there's some interesting stories with Michael Jordan and his kids, like, no, thank you.
Yeah.
But I didn't have those genes, right? I didn't have that kind of pressure for sure. But I think the one thing my parents just did so many things right. And sometimes it overwhelms me because I have 3 kids also, and I'm probably screwing them up in every possible way. Like I wish to God I could take my parents and just I don't know, like be them. And they're actually visiting me right now, and I think that's one of the biggest things is just trying to continue what they did and try to do what they did, and it's so difficult. But my parents just never told me I couldn't. Never once for anything. And even though they knew that it would be tough for me, because when I announced it at the dinner table that night in 1984, they were like, really? Okay, well, that's nice. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. If you want to do that, you're probably going to have to talk a little more to others and not be so shy. And so that's why it was just this cute little dream. Not that they were dismissive of it, but the reality is how was someone who's so painfully shy going to stand in front of a camera with a microphone someday and talk about this?
Yeah. And
it was a legitimate thing. So from that moment on, my parents were really on me to put myself out there more. And when you walk, and I was always kind of tall and lanky and awkward and gangly, and so they're like, stand up straight, sit up straight, like your poise, your posture. When you walk into a room, all of those things matter. And a lot of us military kids kind of had that upbringing. and we practiced handshakes and looking people in the eye, and there's a way to do it, like they just did so much right, and they never told me that I couldn't, so I believed it even though it was such a long shot. And then looking back, the long shot, that's an understatement, because there's just so many things, there were so many things working against me. But when you teach your kids to believe, and most importantly to try, and even if I would have fallen on my face and not made it, which, by the way, I've fallen on my face too many times to count in front of, millions of people at a time. But because of my upbringing, I know that that doesn't mean it's over. Get back up and do it again and do it better.
Wow.
Because once you make the mistake, fine. And this is the military and my father, that's fine. Let's identify what happened, what went wrong, what you could have done better, and let's make sure we don't repeat that so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
It's actually quite simple. But I just never believed that I couldn't do it, even though I probably should have, because there were so many things and, frankly, people against me, but I was so naive. And that was a blessing.
Yeah. So beautiful, Sage. I love it. And I just love the idea of just, you declaring it at 11 years old and then beginning to pursue it and having your parents just, giving you the green light of their belief and being behind you in that.
But that's why I'm able to, and thank you, but that's why I'm able to always maintain perspective here today, having quote unquote made it. Because my dream was truly to host a sports center. And when that happened for the first time in 2007, a month, 3 weeks after I came to ESPN, I almost, were 5 seconds out from the red light coming on and them cueing me to go. I had a lump in my throat, and I almost couldn't even say hello and say my name, because how does that dream come true? Because frankly, it's a dream of millions of kids and adults out there.
Yeah.
Why me? But that's the one thing that I think I'm most proud of, is that I've never lost perspective and never forgotten how fortunate, lucky, and blessed I am, because I do believe those are three different things, to be doing it. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have off days. Doesn't mean I don't have fights with producers. It doesn't mean I don't get ticked off and angry and say, what am I doing? Because there's so many things that go on behind the scenes that no one sees. And that's fine, because every job has that.
Sure.
But just because you're able to live out your dream doesn't mean that there's not negatives to go along with the many, many positives. But that is one reason why, and my parents, we talk about this all the time, why if someone asks me for a picture, or if I'm in the airport or with my kids, I always say yes, much to the chagrin sometimes of my producers, or even whenever we're on the road and it's big crowds. ESPN always has security with all of us, and the police are like, Sage, no, you can't. I was like, no, I'm stopping. I have to.
Yeah.
Because, once you take that for granted, you're done. And I've seen too many people in my business, and I know you have too, take it for granted and forget where they came from. And I refuse to do that.
That's beautiful, Sage. One thing I read, and talking about perspective, and I read this online, not sure that it's true, you can confirm it. But what I read online, talking about perspective, is that you started it at ESPN in 2007, but I read online that you were actually offered an opportunity, in 2004, but you turned it down because you were pregnant with your second child. Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
So, perspective. You had an opportunity at your dream. How in the world did you say no to that opportunity?
Well, that was what a lot of people asked me, including some family members, including my agent, and including good friends who are like, wait. For as long as we've known you, this has been your dream. Yeah. And you're telling me that you've got this offer. It's here. And you're going to say no? And trust me, it was scary. But my first kid was 21 months old. February, March. I was 3 weeks away from giving birth to my second, and I knew I wanted more. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got from anyone years prior was from the late, great Stuart Scott, one of my best friends, who wasn't my best friend at the time. I had just met him, but we happened to have the same agent, and she introduced us, and he at one point pulled me aside, and he said, I know this is where you want to be. I know you want to come to ESPN, but please don't do it unless you're ready to be all in, 110%, because you'll get eaten alive. And let me tell you, he was right. Because I was ready 3 years later, and I still got eaten alive. So it was the best piece of advice because I knew that I wanted to have more kids. And so how could I, and again, like they wanted me to come pretty much right away in 2004. And so that meant what? Give birth, have another kid who's less than 2 years old at home, and then move your family up to Connecticut. At the time I was living in the D.C., Baltimore area. Move your family up to Connecticut in the frozen tundra. More expensive, people you don't know, a job that's your dream job, but like the pressure that comes with it. And I wanted to have a third kid. So how could I put the focus and the hard work and the dedication into my job when I knew that my heart was elsewhere? So I took a chance and I turned it down. And it was scary because especially at the time, I mean, you don't say no to ESPN. And that's what my agent at the time said. She's like, listen, this is just the reality. I'm not saying it's right, but this is the reality of the situation. Like, they don't need you. You need them for what you want to do in your career. They don't need you because there's a million yous out there. And she didn't mean that in a negative way towards me personally, but there's just a million other, at the time I was 31. And so she's like, there's just a million other people out there who are your age who are going to come for maybe even less, and it wasn't even that much, just because it's ESPN, and you're going to get blackballed and they will not call you back. Wow. And I remember just talking to my family about it and praying about it and remembering the sacrifices my parents made for me and for us and for our kids. And that this was the first true test, family first. And I figured, you know what? If it's meant to be, then it will be at some other point. And so I told my agent to say thank you, but no thank you. Turn it down. I went back to the place where I was. I was at Comcast Sportsnet Mid-Atlantic. Like I said, in D.C., Baltimore, covering. I had an awesome position as a main anchor, and I got to also continue my biggest priority, which was to cover an NFL team, be a beat reporter. I was a beat reporter for the Baltimore Ravens coming off their Super Bowl year in 2000, 2001, and I had great relationships and established some credibility for sure in the market. And I was like, I have a good thing going here. They want me back for 3 years at Comcast, so I'll take that deal and take a chance. And I signed a deal, and then 2 years later I had another kid. I had those 3 kids in less than 4 years, and it was funny because I remember the Ravens owner at one point, he's like, every time you're pregnant during the season, we go to the playoffs. When you're not, we don't. Can you please stay knocked up and just make sure we get – I was like, whatever I can do to help you guys. I'll just keep getting pregnant.
You need to have 10 kids. We're looking for a decade of you.
Keep going. We want to be the Patriots. And so I took that chance. And then 3 years later, ESPN called back. And I knew that I was done having kids. I actually wanted more, but my husband has been a stay-at-home dad from day one, and his opinion does matter since he's at home.
Yes.
So I cut it off. And I still regret to this day not having a fourth child, but that's okay. My next wife, I'll do it. And so, I took it this time, and it was funny. It was a better offer in every way, too. I was like, funny how that works. Yeah. I was just ready. But I was scared to death. But I knew in my heart and in my gut and from my upbringing and my faith that you can't lose if you put your family first. Yeah. And I did, and it worked.
A couple things.
By the way, even if it hadn't, then I always would have wondered for sure.
Yeah.
And it's easy to say hindsight because it did work, but I would like to think that I would have been at peace with it because I put my kids first, and you never regret that.
Absolutely. And say, you said, you talked about the fears, you've talked about your faith leading you through that. How has, your faith been something that has guided you, through that? I'm guessing it's something that was given to you, from your parents, and you carry on their legacy in many, many different ways. But how has faith guided these decisions to step into these fearful decisions and put principle and put family first?
And I think in many ways, it's just there, and I just had it, and I just believed. I was raised Catholic, and still practicing.
Yeah.
But my beliefs have certainly evolved, and into many different things. I don't even really know how to quantify it, but I will say this. I mean, having been raised Catholic and going through, all of it in the First Holy Communion and your confirmation and all that, like I love that I can go anywhere in the world and walk into a church and feel comfortable, a Catholic church, and know what to do, when to do it, music, kneeling, when to kneel, what to say, the smell. Like, I love it, and that's what I was able to do growing up, is anywhere we moved in the world, those traditions were the same, and there was a real comfort in that. And I still have that. I was in New York City, and I stopped by St. Patrick's Cathedral just because it was there, and it's magical to me. But it's funny, now it's one thing to go through those emotions, and I don't say that lightly, I mean, those traditions, but it's another thing to take it to another level and truly find your own spirituality. And that's what I've found, and much more recently, like probably the last 6 to 12 months, frankly, is to look at things just differently. And to be completely accepting of others, no matter how much I disagree with them on some important topics. Abortion, I mean, a lot of those things that are quite controversial. But the biggest thing recently is to just let go of being judgmental. And listen, I have 3 teenagers right now. So I'm trying to really practice. I have to practice what I preach, and 2 of them are girls. So the mean girl thing is real, and so I'm trying to evolve myself with all of that. And so, I would sometimes you get hurt along the way at work, and I've had many painful things, some public, some private, but through all the ups and downs, it's like I just come back to that core belief that God's got my back. He's got me. And he's never given me more than I can handle, even if at the time I thought that it was too much. I go back to a tough time at Indiana University when my quote-unquote plan, my whole plan in life was blown up. I was in Army ROTC, and I had this whole plan. Like, I signed up for ROTC on my own. My dad had no idea. I just loved the structure of it. I loved the patriotism. I loved the discipline. I loved what it stood for. I loved fighting for our country. I loved it. I believed in it. And I thought, if I, graduate from IU, go straight into the military as an officer for 5 years, go overseas to the Armed Forces Network and get my experience on TV, and then eventually get to ESPN. Like, I had this whole plan. And for a couple of reasons, it blew up. And I could no longer continue after my sophomore year. And I remember I was in bed for like a week. My friends had to call my parents to come get me out of bed. I was so depressed. I felt I had disappointed the world. And my mom left me when they went back home. At the time, they were stationed at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. When they left, my mom left this frame next to my bed, and it said, "If you want to give God a good laugh, tell him your plans." And I still have that, and she gave that to me in 1992. And maybe it was 92, 93. Anyway, that has gotten me through so much. That God has a plan for me, and I might not know what it is, but I have to sit back and shut up and just trust that he will lead me the right way. If I sit back and quit trying to control everything, and we all try to control everything and have this great, you have to have some sort of a plan, right? Okay. Yeah, you have to. There are some certain things we have to just have out in front of us and follow through with. But sometimes you just have to let go. And trust that he'll be there. And it's quite scary for many people. But it's actually been one of the healthiest things in the past, probably the past 2-3 years, when things have gotten tougher. It's funny, sometimes the higher you climb and the more successful you are, the tougher the hits come and the problems are. So then what do you do? And the reason why I've been able to maintain that perspective and not be bitter with some things, frankly, is because of that faith. And I'm just so thankful for my parents for instilling that in me. But then I'm proud of myself recently for letting go and just sitting back and trusting. That's really, really hard to do, especially when, you're in the public eye and people are coming at you. And sometimes you want to stand up and defend yourself and say, no, this is what this means. This is what I said. This is what I meant. This is what the truth is. And you just have to let go. And it has been awesome to find that peace.
Wow. It's beautiful, Sage. And one thing we say, each and every week on Radio Theology, and often on the Born to Be podcast, is we believe that, God has created you on purpose and for a purpose, that he's for you, not against you, and that he's near you, not far away from you. And, we try to instill that in our audience week in and week out, because, whether you're on ESPN or you're you're a barista at Starbucks, there's those dreams in your life. There's that sense of purpose that still is alive in you. And to know that the God who runs the universe and created you, he's for you, he's not against you, and he's near you in those struggles, I think is something that it sounds like has guided you as well.
And just to trust. And I think for a long time I was pushing him away because I was afraid of what his answers would be. Some personal questions,
Yeah.
And who am I to, speculate as to what his answer might be? Like, who do I think I am? And so that was a recent realization where it's like, just breathe and let go and trust what his answer is, and look for it though, because sometimes we're afraid to open our mind as to where the answers might come from, because maybe it's not something that hits you in the face, right?
Yeah.
But I finally quit. My faith never wavered, but I certainly was just trying to set it up to how I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And that's so much harder. Why do we do that to ourselves?
Well, I don't think you're the only one, Sage, so you're at least in good company, right?
Okay, good.
Well, Sage, I who want to be respectful of your time, and but I do want to. We've been a little bit more serious here, but the sports person in me, I do kind of just want to. Well, maybe two more questions, and then we'll let you go. But I kind of want to know, like, as you look back, what was your favorite interview of all time, and what's your favorite sporting event to cover?
My favorite sporting event to cover right now is the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
I love it because it's not just one day. It's potentially 7 games. That's what we hope. Last year stunk because it was only 4. So this year we're hoping for it to go 7 again.
Well, and if Golden State plays like they did last night, that train isn't moving.
I love that team.
Yeah.
and yes, you know what? Yes, we're all biased, darn it. And people get mad. They're like, well, wait a minute, you're a journalist. You can't. I was like, yeah, okay, yes, you're right. When it comes to doing my job, trust me, I am unbiased. However, we're all human, and we're all fans. I would not be in this profession, in this job, if I weren't a fan of some team and some players at some point.
That's
right?
a great point.
I mean, give me a break. So, I mean, it's funny. If you're a fan of a certain team and people agree with you, then it's okay. But if you're not, then you're not a journalist, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny here in Indy. We're obviously huge Colts fans, and I think it's funny is we all hate Tom Brady, but if he just had a different jersey on, we would think he was the greatest person in the world. You know what I mean?
Of course, we'd be fine with him and forget the fact that he's a human being.
Yeah, exactly.
Now listen, I don't like him either because I'm tired of him beating up on us for the past 20 years. But and as an IU fan, I mean, it's very hard to remain unbiased. I will say this, though. ESPN's been awesome in the past few years. They've just kind of let go of that whole, just the stringent expectation that we have to just remain completely impartial. My co-host on the 6 p.m. Sports Center, Kevin Nagandi, is Philly through and through. It's obnoxious, but it's Kevin, and that's where he got his passion from. And I mean, those Philly fans, they're a real deal. And so recently, when the IU was, I remember I was anchoring Sports Center with Keith Olbermann on the first day of the NIT this year, and when IU was playing whoever they were playing, I think it was it Arkansas that first round, or maybe that was the second round. At the end of the show with Olbermann, who's somebody I used to worship and look up to from afar, and the fact that I was hosting SportsCenter with him is just comical. And at the end, he's like, isn't IUP playing a game tonight? I'm like, what? I almost hit him. And then I did my IU sign with my arms, and of course it became a little meme in Hoosier Land. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud of that. And I would not, and that's part of the commercial that IU did for me, which is the best thing ever. I would not be here without Indiana University.
Yeah,
you're damn right. I'm going to brag about them.
Absolutely.
But to answer your question, see, I'm not answering your question. I'm being bad interviewee. I absolutely, I love the finals. I love what comes with it. I love that I'm courtside for the 6 p.m. Sports Center. Steph Curry is thank goodness he's such an accurate shooter, because otherwise I would have been bonked in the head a million times when he's warming up 5 feet behind me.
Yeah.
The adrenaline rush that comes with that, as I'm getting America set to watch these games, and to have Jeff Van Gundy on, and Mark Jackson, and Tim Legler, and Doris Burke, who's one of my heroes, and all these people, and then Steph Curry, players on after. Like, the adrenaline rush that comes with that, because we're winging it. There's no teleprompter out there. The whole thing is ad lib.
Yeah.
With some sort of structure going in. Like, that is my favorite thing right now. The energy. It's the best time. I'm so thankful that I'm able to cover the NBA, and I've been able to since 2012 directly, covering the NBA Finals. The best era since Michael Jordan. The best. Like, what a blessing to be part of it at this time. So right now it's my favorite. I also love the World Series because that's out of my comfort zone a little bit. I love it. I've done the Masters the past couple of years. That's out of my comfort zone. I love it. The Super Bowl obviously is huge. That's where I really cut my teeth covering the Colts. It's the first NFL team I ever covered, and I was my second year, I guess, at Wish TV was when I was there at the Colts complex when it was Ryan Leaf or Peyton Manning.
Oh, man, did we make the right decision on that one?
We absolutely did. But by the way, I've gotten to know Ryan Leaf as well. I do a Gatorade event, High School Athlete of the Year Gatorade event with Peyton Manning every year out in LA before the ESPYs. I've gotten to know Ryan Leaf too. What a wonderful human being. You talk about somebody pushing through it.
Yeah.
And having faith and falling on their face in the worst possible way that has nothing to do with football.
Yeah.
With life and being in prison. And someone who has come up and is a believer again and has forgiven himself. These are the stories that keep me going, by the way, the Ryan Leafs of the world. It's just crazy to think that 20 years ago I was in that room when they chose Peyton instead. I just love those live events. The interview question, the best interview, I mean, honestly, I don't even remember most of them. I mean, I remember interviewing Michael Jordan. I remember one of the best was Pat Summitt, the late, great Pat Summitt. Yeah. When she won her 1,000th game, and she was the first to do so, and as a woman and as a pioneer and as someone that was like, take that, Gino, take that, everybody else, and it was so I was scared to death to interview her live on SportsCenter. Coach K from Duke is a classmate of my father's at West Point. He wiped my butt. I mean, he changed my diaper. It's not a good visual. Every time I see him, I'm like, oh.
Yeah. It's good to see you again, Coach.
Hi. Yes, eyes up. He gave me a high school graduation gift, a wedding gift, but I was still so nervous because I felt more pressure because he's my dad's old classmate. I got to nail this one. Every time I see him, I bomb. I'm terrible around him because I get so nervous. But the best interview I've ever done, and this is going to bore some people, but it was 2 years ago at Arlington National Cemetery. SportsCenter on the road, our coverage of Veterans Day is like none other. It's one of the things I'm most proud of to say I'm part of ESPN is our Veterans Day coverage and our commitment to veterans worldwide. And we decided to take SportsCenter on the road to Arlington National Cemetery. And my parents happened to be in town and asked if they could come by and watch. And I said, oh, my God, they've never really seen me do anything live, especially not at ESPN.
Wow.
And I said, absolutely. And so my producer said at one point, it's like, hey, with your dad's 23 years of military service and West Point, would he come on? And my dad's like, absolutely not. This is not about me. Absolutely not. And my producer, and I said, listen, he's not going to do it for me. So my producer went up and asked him, and he agreed. And at the end of the show, signing off from Arlington National Cemetery with hundreds of thousands of people, Americans, who died for us, and I'm getting to do my dream job on the grounds, those hallowed grounds, where 200 yards behind me, my grandfather, a Buffalo Soldier, was buried. And to have his dad, my father, there with me and have him talking live on SportsCenter about what sports means to veterans across the world and why we need to keep doing what we're doing and giving them a break. And what the military in general means to this country. It was the most amazing, surreal moment for me to be living my dream, interviewing my father live on SportsCenter with my grandfather buried a couple hundred yards behind me was by far the best, most important thing I've done. Because it's so much deeper than just sports.
Yeah.
I, to this day, hear about that from coaches, from players, from random people at Target, at the airport, because when we are comfortable enough as broadcasters to allow others to see our personal side and kind of go behind the curtain, it goes a long way. That's why I'm like that on social media. I'm very open with my kids and everything because that's the real me, not the okay, the pretty makeup and the nice clothes and then getting to interview Steph Curry or LeBron James. That's awesome, and it's part of my job, and I'm so thankful, but that's not me. What we were able to show that day, unexpectedly, was the real me. And as my father answered my first question as I was trying to keep it together, a tear rolled down his face and mine as he showed such pride for his daughter pushing through so much adversity and people trying to make sure that I wasn't able to achieve this dream, and the color barrier that he broke as an athlete at West Point. It was surreal. And so it's not the sexiest answer, but it's definitely my truth in 12 years at ESPN and almost 24 years in this business, that the intersection of my personal life and professional life, and to be able to have my father, my hero, on SportsCenter, is I don't think anything else can top it. So sorry to LeBron and Zion Williamson and everybody else, all the amazing people out there. Like, I love you, but nothing will ever compare to that. And the fact that I got to showcase my family in that way is priceless.
Wow, Sage, I'm a wreck over here. My dad's a Vietnam vet.
Sorry.
You've got me right in the feels. It's just,
what your father did is allowing you to do your thing too, and to talk about things more important than sports, right? I mean, you're talking about things. What you're doing every day, every week, is helping change lives, and you probably won't even hear from most of the people you've affected. I hope that people do reach out to you. But what Ryan did, and to leave what he was doing and to dedicate himself, like, those things take such courage. It's overwhelming to me, especially as I, at age 46, try to continue to soul search and find the best way for me, and that true, genuine joy and happiness. And I have it, but I know there's still more because I'm still learning how to trust and to let go and to never doubt that God's got my back.
Absolutely. Oh, Sage, it's so good. And that's such the heartbeat behind what we want to do with the Born to Be podcast. And as you're listening to this right now, I don't know if you're mowing your lawn, you're on the treadmill, whatever you're doing, I can't promise you that you're going to become one of the nation's most foremost sportscasters in the world, but God has put a dream in your heart. He's created you on purpose and for a purpose. And that's why we want you to get a part and take the Spiritual DNA online course, discover who God's created you to be, and how he's made you uniquely to actually fulfill this purpose that's deep within your soul. And Sage, oh my gosh, I was excited about this because I feel like I know you. I watch you like every day on SportsCenter, but through Ryan, I was excited about this interview and about this episode, but just this time with you, it's even far exceeded my expectations, and just what you're able to share in your journey. True inspiration. It's been an amazing time to be with you.
Thank you for having me, and for your patience, because as I know all of you can, if you're really being honest, I'm kind of difficult to track down and to communicate with. I'm working on that. Maybe God can help me be a little more organized. What do you think?
I say you just be you. Organization can be somebody else's job. You keep being you.
Fine. I'll let somebody else, but it means a lot that you guys stuck with me, and I thank you for continuing to push me to keep digging and searching and finding and being better, because I know that that's what he wants. So you're the best. Thank you for having me. Well,
thanks so much, Sage. And if you're in town for some India-related thing, we'll try to look you up and come see you or something like that.
I would love it. I mean, listen, no matter where I am on the road, I have to have one glass of wine, right? I'm not with the kids.
This is true. Lisa's one of our co-hosts. She's in studio right now, and she just put her hands in the air and said hallelujah. So she totally agrees.
Listen, God has me drinking wine at church every Sunday. I think he approves. Lisa, I'll meet you there.
Hey, he made like 120 gallons of it in his first miracle, so he's a fan.
Thank you. Exactly.
Thanks for listening to the Born to Be podcast. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got a question for Pastor Darren, a suggestion for a future guest, or if the podcast has made an impact in your life, get in touch with us at blackbirdmission.com. And if no one else tells you today, you were made on purpose and for a purpose. God is near to you, not far from you, and God is for you, not against you. Have a great week.